The moment the handcuffs clicked shut around her wrists, Vanessa's world shifted, not because she was guilty of any crime, but because no one believed who she truly was. A black woman. A respected CEO. The leader of a major airport. Yet in that instant, none of it mattered. The cameras flashed, the whispers grew louder, and a powerful story of identity, injustice, and resilience was about to unfold, one that would challenge the system, shake the city, and force everyone to confront the truth behind the badge. The sky outside was still a gentle shade of twilight blue as Dr. Vanessa Cole stepped out of her private car onto the curb of Northgate International Airport. She straightened the lapels of her tailored navy blazer, the cool morning breeze gently brushing against her cheek. At 5:45 a.m., the airport was already buzzing, not with chaos, but the rhythmic movement of a machine she had spent years refining. This was her domain. Vanessa was the first black woman and the youngest person ever appointed CEO of a Tier 1 international airport in the country. She had degrees from MIT and Howard, an MBA from Wharton, and a quiet confidence that came from building a career in an industry that rarely looked like her. She wasn't flashy. She didn't need to be. Her presence spoke volumes. Clean lines, quiet power. She entered through the executive access door near Terminal C, her passkey granting her access to the back corridors. Today she had decided to walk through the main concourse to quietly observe morning operations, especially since the airport's newly remodeled concourse was opening to the public that day. She loved these unannounced walkthroughs. Watching passengers flow through the terminals, employees interact, and security perform under pressure gave her real-time insight better than any dashboard report. Vanessa carried her slim brown leather briefcase in one hand and a reusable coffee mug in the other. Her phone buzzed with texts, her assistant texting confirmations, department heads sending updates, but she let them sit unread for the moment. Instead, she moved with purpose toward Concourse B, taking note of a cleaner finishing up a spot near the charging station and a gate agent helping a confused elderly couple. The airport felt alive. She smiled slightly, remembering how far it had come. Northgate used to be known for long delays, outdated infrastructure, and poor customer service. Since she'd taken over 2 years ago, on-time departures had improved 17%. Traveler satisfaction hit record highs, and new safety and equity programs were being modeled nationwide. She was proud, but always alert. "Good morning, ma'am." A TSA officer greeted her as she passed near the security checkpoint. She nodded politely, not pausing to engage. She wanted to blend in, but blending in didn't come easy for Vanessa. She was the only black woman in sight wearing a business suit and walking confidently through a space traditionally dominated by white male executives or uniformed personnel. She knew the looks, some curious, others skeptical. She had long ago stopped trying to decipher them. What mattered was performance. She delivered always. Vanessa's quiet inspection brought her near a section of the main terminal where a minor mechanical issue had been flagged the night before. As she stopped near a metal panel beside a row of gates, she set her coffee cup down and pulled out her phone to review the maintenance ticket. That was when it started. A voice behind her, assertive and unfamiliar, pierced the low hum of the terminal. "Ma'am, I need to see your identification." Vanessa turned slowly to see 2 uniformed police officers approaching her from the side. One was tall and broad-shouldered, the other shorter but no less commanding. Their eyes were focused on her with suspicion, not inquiry. "Excuse me?" she replied, raising an eyebrow. "We got a call about someone loitering in a restricted area near security equipment." "You match the description," the taller officer said, hand near his belt. Vanessa blinked. "I'm not loitering." We'll need to see ID." "Now?" A few passengers nearby paused, sensing tension. Vanessa glanced at them briefly, then back at the officers. Her briefcase, with all her credentials and badge, was still on the bench where she had just set down her coffee. But they hadn't asked for clarification. She moved slightly toward it, but the shorter officer stepped in. "Ma'am, don't move until we clear this up." Vanessa stared at him. This wasn't the first time she'd been questioned or second-guessed. Not the first time she'd felt her authority reduced to nothing by a uniform and a voice that didn't want to listen. But this was different. This was her airport. Still, she kept her voice calm. "My name is Dr. Vanessa Cole. I'm the CEO of this airport. If you allow me to, ma'am will verify that. Please cooperate and come with us." Her mouth tightened. She could feel the eyes gathering now, passengers pausing with phones discreetly recording, staff looking confused. This wasn't a private inquiry anymore. It was becoming a public scene, and it was happening fast. Vanessa resisted the urge to raise her voice. Not out of fear, but out of calculation. She knew how this would look, an assertive black woman arguing with uniformed officers in the middle of an airport terminal. The optics would never favor her, even if she was the most powerful person in the entire building. Instead, she stood still, composed, her voice even. "My briefcase is right there," she said, gesturing slightly with her chin. "My identification is inside." The shorter officer stepped over to the bench and picked up the brown leather briefcase, flipping it open with no regard for privacy. His partner remained beside her, hand still on his belt, not on his gun, but close enough to send a message. "Dr. Vanessa Cole?" The officer read aloud from her ID. "This says CEO." Vanessa simply nodded. "Nice fake," he muttered, glancing back at her. "Where'd you buy it? Or did you just print it?" She blinked slowly. The statement hit harder than she'd expected, not because she hadn't heard this kind of disbelief before, but because it was coming from someone inside her own system. Someone who worked in the very institution she led. "This is real," she said firmly. "Call Michael Luntz, head of airport security. He knows who I am. Or call Director Anita Vasquez from the Board of Aviation." The taller officer scoffed. "Lady, you've got a well-prepared script. But we've seen this before. You're not the first person to try to pass themselves off as someone they're not." Vanessa stared at him, stunned by the arrogance, the confidence in his wrongness. She opened her mouth to respond, but a new voice cut through the tension. "Is there a problem here?" A young man in a Northgate Airport operations vest approached. His name tag read Jeremy. Vanessa recognized him, vaguely part of the overnight operations crew. The officers turned toward him. "We're handling it," the taller one said. Flatly. Jeremy looked at Vanessa, confused. "This is, Dr. Cole. She's the CEO." The room stilled. The officers didn't blink. "Do you personally know that?" The shorter cop challenged. Jeremy hesitated. "I mean, I've only seen her once in a board meeting. But yeah, everyone knows who she is. She's on the posters in the employee lounge, for God's sake." The taller officer didn't like that. He stepped forward. "Son, step back. You don't need to involve yourself here." Vanessa had had enough. "No," she said firmly. "He's right. And if you had taken 10 seconds to do your job properly, we wouldn't be standing here." The shorter officer bristled. "Ma'am." "Doctor," she corrected. "Dr. Vanessa Cole, Chief Executive Officer of Northgate International Airport. And unless you plan on arresting me for walking through my own terminal, I strongly suggest you put down my briefcase and call your supervisor." Silence followed. The crowd had thickened. Several phones were clearly recording now. Jeremy stood awkwardly between them, unsure whether to stay or slip away. "Ma'am," the shorter officer said, this time with less aggression, "we're just doing our job." "No, you're not," Vanessa replied coldly. Your job is to protect and serve, not to profile and detain. You saw a black woman in a suit near a security panel and decided she didn't belong. The taller officer finally shifted uncomfortably. Look, maybe we made a mistake. Vanessa tilted her head. Maybe? Before anyone could say more, another figure rushed through the crowd, a woman in a tailored gray pantsuit. Holding a badge clipped to a chain around her neck. It was Maria Hahn, Deputy Director of Terminal Operations. Her eyes locked onto Vanessa. Immediately, Dr. Cole. I just heard. She stopped as she took in the scene. Are you all right? Vanessa nodded, but her face was tight. Tell them who I am. Maria turned to the officers, her voice sharp. This is Dr. Cole. She's your boss's boss's boss. You just detained the CEO of this airport. Both officers looked like they'd swallowed glass. The shorter one opened his mouth, closed it, then finally said, We didn't know. Vanessa stepped forward and retrieved her briefcase from the bench. She was trembling slightly now. Though only someone who knew her well would notice. Maria turned to the officers. Leave. Now, I'll be filing a full incident report. As they walked off, faces flushed, avoiding eye contact, Vanessa turned to Maria. I want every second of this pulled from the security footage, she said quietly. And I want their badge numbers. Maria nodded, already pulling out her phone. Vanessa looked around. Dozens of eyes were on her, some sympathetic, some curious, others stunned. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Instead, she turned and walked calmly toward the executive wing of the terminal. Inside, though, a storm was building. This wasn't over. Vanessa's heels echoed off the polished floor as she strode through the executive wing of the terminal. Her briefcase felt heavier than usual, not because of its contents, but because of what it now symbolized: proof of identity, power, and the fragility of perception. She entered the glass-paneled conference room on the third floor, where early morning meetings with department heads were scheduled to begin. The skyline beyond the windows glowed golden with the rising sun, but Vanessa had no interest in beauty right now. Maria Hahn followed close behind, phone still pressed to her ear. Yes, surveillance from Concourse B, Gate 17. I need the last 20 minutes. No edits, no delay. Vanessa dropped her briefcase onto the table, opened it, and pulled out a slim folder. Inside were the morning's updates on the new international arrival process, a memorandum about expansion talks with the Gulf airline, and now nothing that felt remotely relevant. You good? Maria asked gently. Vanessa didn't answer right away. Her jaw was clenched tight. Get me a meeting with Michael Luntz, now. He's not on the schedule today, but then clear it. Call him. Maria stepped back, instantly dialing. The conference room began to fill with staff. First came Carol from marketing, then Dinesh from operations, and finally Raymond from security audits. They all greeted Vanessa as usual, but the tension in the room was undeniable. At least two of them had already seen footage, or heard whispers. Everyone knew something had happened. I'll brief everyone in 10, Vanessa said quietly. Right now, I need privacy. Maria gave a single nod and escorted the others out. Vanessa was alone now, staring at her own reflection in the black glass of the TV monitor. She looked exactly like she always did, sharp, confident, composed. But beneath the surface, a fire was rising, not rage, not even humiliation. Resolve. For years, she had fought to create pathways, to rise through systems that were never built for people who looked like her. But this incident, this blatant public act of disrespect, wasn't just about her. It was a window into something deeper, something systemic. This wasn't just a bad morning. It was a test. Her phone buzzed. Assistant. Urgent news tips sent. To Channel 5. Black woman detained at Northgate Airport. misidentified as loiterer. Vanessa sighed sharply. Too late for quiet resolution. The outside world was already watching. She took a deep breath and stood, as Maria re-entered with Michael Luntz, the director of airport security. Michael was red-faced, his usual cool demeanor shattered. "Dr. Cole? I just heard. I'm so sorry." "Save it," Vanessa said flatly. "I need answers." Michael sat. "I already have both officers' statements. They claimed they were responding to a report from an anonymous passenger about someone acting suspiciously near a maintenance panel." She scoffed. "So an anonymous tip was enough to detain someone without probable cause? In a public part of the terminal? They say you refused to cooperate." "I identified myself," she snapped. "They dismissed my title as fake. They said my ID looked printed." "Michael, I've worked with your team for 2 years. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was profiling." He looked down. I know. I want both officers placed on administrative leave, effective immediately." "Done," he said quickly. "We're reviewing the entire department's protocol." "I'm not interested in protocol," Vanessa cut in. "I'm interested in accountability." She paused. "And change." He nodded, but Vanessa could tell he wasn't sure what that meant yet. No one was, but she did. She glanced at the clock. 7:12 a.m. Her day was only just beginning. By 8 a.m., Vanessa had finished the leadership meeting, kept it short, focused, without mentioning the incident. There was work to do, and she refused to let the entire airport stall because 2 men in uniform failed to recognize her humanity. Still, word was spreading. As she walked the terminal again later that morning, employees looked at her differently, not out of disrespect, but out of shared disbelief. They'd heard or seen or read. The event had already entered the digital bloodstream. Near gate A12, a janitor paused and nodded to her. "We got your back, Dr. Cole." It was simple, quiet, but it meant more than she could say. By 9:15 a.m., the media call started. Channel 5 wanted comment. The Post had sent a journalist to the airport lobby. National networks weren't far behind. Maria returned with more updates. "Footage is clean. No aggression on your part. No raised voice. You look composed the entire time." Vanessa smiled bitterly. "I've had practice." "We need a plan," Maria said. "If this story goes viral, it already is." She looked out across the airport, her airport. "No more hiding," Vanessa said. "Schedule a press conference. Noon. Right here. Terminal B atrium." Maria blinked. "You want to speak?" "I have to," she replied. "This isn't about image control. It's about leadership." By noon, dozens of reporters had assembled. Beneath the atrium skylight, employees watched from the upper level. Travelers stopped, drawn by the bright lights and cameras. Vanessa stepped forward to the podium. Her posture was regal, her expression unreadable. "Good afternoon," she began. "I'm Dr. Vanessa Cole, CEO of Northgate International Airport." A beat. "This morning I was detained by airport police officers in my own terminal because I didn't look like a CEO. I was accused of loitering near a panel I helped approve for installation. I was spoken to with suspicion, dismissed, and not believed." Cameras clicked. Reporters scribbled. "I am safe. I am not angry. But I am not silent." Her voice hardened. "This incident is not isolated. It is part of a broader pattern where appearance overrides reality, where unconscious bias becomes official conduct. That ends here. At Northgate, we believe in safety, but we also believe in dignity." She looked out at the crowd. "There will be accountability. There will be reform. And yes, there will be healing. But I won't apologize for being exactly who I am. I am a black woman. I am an executive. And I belong here." Applause erupted not just from staff, but from travelers, onlookers, and even a few security guards. Vanessa stepped back, heart steady. This was no longer about one morning. It was a movement in the making. The moment Vanessa walked away from the podium, the questions started flying. Dr. Cole, will the officers be fired? Is Northgate liable for racial profiling? Are you planning to sue? She gave no answers, just a polite nod and a wave. Her message had been delivered, clearly, powerfully, and on her own terms. Back in her office on the upper executive level, Maria was already juggling calls from the mayor's office, the Federal Aviation Administration, and a growing list of advocacy groups who wanted statements, partnerships, or apologies. Vanessa shut the door behind her and collapsed into the high-backed leather chair behind her desk. The adrenaline was fading now, replaced by something colder and heavier, the weight of visibility. She had gone viral. Social media clips of the incident, some from passengers, others from official footage, had been edited together by several influencers. One video, titled CEO or Criminal? Watch this black woman handle. 2 officers with class had already passed 1 million views. Another tweet simply read, "She runs the airport. They tried to arrest her." You can't make this up. Hashtag Vanessa Cole, hashtag Northgate bias. Vanessa knew how the media cycle worked. This would dominate the headlines for maybe 48 hours, 72, if she leaned into it. But she wasn't interested in publicity. She wanted justice. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Maria peeked in, her face flushed. "You've got a visitor." "Wasn't on the schedule." Vanessa frowned. "Who?" "Elliot Granger. Federal Transportation Oversight." Vanessa sat upright. "FTO?" "Here." Maria shrugged. "He said it's unofficial, but urgent." Vanessa nodded. "Send him in." A moment later, Elliot stepped inside. He was in his early 50s, white, with silver-rimmed glasses and a serious expression. Vanessa had met him twice before, both times at national airport security summits. He respected her. But he didn't show up without reason. Double quotes Dr. Cole, he said, extending a hand. "I came as soon as I saw the footage. This can't go unanswered." "I appreciate the visit," she said, gesturing for him to sit. He didn't. "Waste time. You're not just a CEO anymore. You're a symbol now." She raised an eyebrow. "That wasn't the goal." "No," he said. "But it's the reality. And from what I've seen, you're handling it better than most would." Vanessa folded her hands on the desk. "I want change. Not headlines. I want this to lead to real consequences. Real retraining. Not just an apology and some diversity seminar." Elliot nodded. "That's why I'm here. I want to help you. Take this national." She tilted her head. "National?" "Yes. You're not the only executive, black, female, or otherwise, who's been mistaken, profiled, dismissed. You just happen to have it on camera. You have the platform. I have access to policy reform pilots." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. "Transportation hubs across the country need a model. Northgate can be it. Implicit bias training tied to employment status. Public accountability dashboards. Minority leadership pipelines." Vanessa flipped through the folder. "You've already drafted this?" "I started last year. But I needed a partner with credibility." Vanessa leaned back, skeptical but intrigued. "You're asking me to turn a personal violation into a national case study?" "I'm asking you," he said, "to do what you've always done, lead." A silence settled between them. Vanessa tapped a pen against the folder. She had never asked for this spotlight, but now that it was on her, maybe there was a way to harness it. Not just for her. For the next woman, the next black leader, the next person who didn't look like they belonged. "Fine," she said finally. But I set the terms, my airport, my rules, Elliot grinned. That's all I needed to hear. By that evening, Vanessa had met with the mayor, held a staff-wide video call, and agreed to appear on 2 major national news programs the following week. The entire terminal buzzed with energy, staff feeling a renewed sense of pride, passengers expressing support, even strangers offering coffee and gratitude. But amid the growing attention, Vanessa stayed focused. The 2 officers were suspended, with pay pending investigation. She assigned a third-party team to oversee it, removing the internal bias from the process. New training modules were ordered within 24 hours. A special roundtable with community leaders was scheduled for Friday. Still, not everyone approved. An anonymous letter slid onto her office door late that night. One sentence, typed in bold sans serif font. You embarrassed us. Don't expect loyalty next time. Vanessa stared at it for a long time. No signature, no direct threat. Just cowardice cloaked in resentment. She slipped the note into a folder labeled Unfinished Business. She wouldn't be shaken. Not now. As she looked out over the emptying terminal, lights dimmed, janitors mopping, late travelers catching last flights. Vanessa felt a strange peace settle over her. The storm had broken, but what came next would matter more than anything. Vanessa stood at the head of the long, glass conference table inside the Northgate Aviation Authority's top-floor executive boardroom. Below her, through panoramic windows, the entire airport hummed with movement. Planes taxiing, baggage carts buzzing, travelers flowing like rivers of energy. But inside the room, tension. 12 board members, all in tailored suits, watched her with unreadable expressions. Some were allies. Some were loyal only to themselves. And at least 2 had been waiting for an opportunity like this. Let's begin, Vanessa said, tapping her tablet. The projection screen behind her lit up. This is a summary of proposed reforms following the incident on June 12th. These include enhanced officer certification, third-party oversight, a public accountability dashboard, and a decentered leadership development initiative. She paused. In addition, I've accepted a collaborative invitation from the Federal Transportation Oversight Board to pilot national anti-bias protocols right here at Northgate. Silence. Then a slow cough from the far right of the table. Gordon Halbrook, mid-60s, white, old money. One of the original appointees to the board from a transportation conglomerate. Vanessa had always known he tolerated her success, but never embraced it. He leaned back, hands folded. That's quite a list, Dr. Cole. Vanessa nodded. It's necessary. Gordon chuckled, eyes narrowing. Necessary for who? For the press? For social media likes? Or for the airport's actual operations? A few members shifted in their chairs. Carol Baker, who'd long been a supporter of Vanessa, frowned. Gordon, with respect. No, Gordon cut her off. We're not here to turn Northgate into a political symbol. We are an international transit hub. We move people. We don't do activism. Vanessa's jaw tightened, but she remained calm. When 2 of our own officers detained the CEO in full view of passengers, this is no longer about politics. It's about perception, reputation, and responsibility. Gordon wasn't done. Your little press moment made a nice story, but let's not mistake that for governance. You've taken a personal grievance and turned it into policy. Vanessa stepped forward. Because that grievance, as you call it, exposed a systemic flaw, one that impacts more than just me. If we let it slide, what happens when it's a passenger next time? Or a pilot? Or a 16-year-old traveler just trying to find her gate? Gordon sneered. What happens is we get sued. That's what. These changes are expensive, Dr. Cole, and controversial. She let that hang in the air, then she pointed to the screen. Projected cost of reforms, $4.2 million. Projected cost of lawsuits and PR damage without them, estimated at $16.9 million, not counting loss of contracts and gate partnerships from minority-owned international vendors. She turned to the board. This isn't just moral leadership, it's fiscal responsibility. The room shifted. Again, Carol raised her hand. I move we advance the reform proposal to an implementation vote. Seconds passed. Then Raymond Choi, representing the Logistics Consortium, slowly raised his hand. Seconded. Gordon looked like he'd tasted. Sour Milk. Vanessa surveyed the room. All in favor? 7 hands rose immediately. 3 followed after a beat, cautious but willing. Only Gordon and 1 other man abstained. Motion passed. Vanessa didn't smile, didn't gloat. She simply nodded and collected her tablet. Then we begin. After the meeting, Carol caught up with her in the hallway. You handled that perfectly, she said. No grandstanding, just truth. Vanessa exhaled. He's going to push back harder next time. Carol gave a small grin. Then push harder. Still, they parted ways. Later that evening, in her office, Vanessa reviewed footage again. Not of the incident, but of the press conference. She watched her own face, frozen on screen, calm, poised, unflinching. She studied herself not out of vanity, but as a strategist. She wasn't just managing an airport anymore. She was managing a movement. The flash of cameras and the swarm of reporters had finally started to thin out. For weeks, it seemed like every moment of her life was under the spotlight, every word twisted, every action analyzed, every rumor magnified. But now, as the last camera crews packed up their gear and the microphones were stowed away, a quiet descended over her world. It was a silence that felt unfamiliar. Almost fragile. She sat alone in the empty conference room, the hum of the air. Conditioning the only sound. The polished table reflected her tired eyes back at her, eyes that had been scanned by thousands, questioned by many, but understood by few. When the cameras leave, what remains? That was the question she faced now. Without the noise and spectacle, the story boiled down to something much simpler and much harder. The real work. She thought about all the people who had stood with her and those who had turned away when few. The headlines screamed their version of the truth. The friends who called, the strangers who sent messages of support, the critics who stayed silent. And she realized something important. The fight wasn't for the cameras. It was for herself, for her integrity, and for every quiet moment when she could look in the mirror and know she hadn't let them break her. Outside, the city moved on, indifferent and relentless. But inside, something new was beginning. Steady resolve to rebuild, to reclaim her story on her terms. Because when the cameras leave, the real story begins. After tireless efforts, Vanessa finally reaches the person who can verify her identity. A tense moment as she waits for confirmation, and when it comes, a wave of relief mixed with frustration. The official recognition is a step forward, but feels like a small victory against a much larger injustice. The police officers involved realize the gravity of their mistake. Some show genuine remorse, others struggle with denial. The internal tension grows as the department tries to contain the fallout. Vanessa's name echoes through the precinct, a reminder of the error and its impact. A public apology is issued, but it feels hollow, scripted, and insufficient. Vanessa confronts the gap between words and real accountability. She grapples with whether to accept it or demand more, deeper change beyond the statement. The media catches wind of the story, and it explodes. Social media debates flare, news anchors dissect every angle, and the public splits between support and skepticism. Vanessa watches the narrative unfold, wary of being misrepresented again. Inside the airport's boardroom, the leadership confronts their law enforcement partners. Discussions turn heated as they weigh the impact on the company's reputation and future. Questions arise about policies, partnerships, and promises for reform. An internal police investigation launches, delving into potential racial profiling and misconduct. The walls of silence begin to crack, but old loyalties and protective attitudes create roadblocks. Vanessa's case becomes a catalyst for exposing deeper issues. Vanessa steps into the spotlight on her own terms. She shares her story publicly, interviews, speeches, and op-eds. She refuses to be just a victim, transforming pain into power and inspiring others. Vanessa connects with other Black leaders and professionals who share similar experiences of discrimination and misunderstanding. Together, they build a coalition to push for systemic reforms and greater representation. Vanessa hosts a public Q&A at the airport, bringing community members, officials, and media together. Tensions run high, but honest dialogue begins. It's messy, emotional, but a necessary step toward healing and change. Vanessa's story catches fire nationwide. Major news networks, podcasts, and social justice platforms amplify her voice. She becomes a symbol of resilience and leadership. Alongside the praise, she faces increased scrutiny and pressure. Using her influence, Vanessa pushes through tough negotiations to revise airport police partnership agreements. She demands transparency, bias training, and accountability measures. Some partners resist, but her position and public support give her leverage. In a rare private moment, Vanessa wrestles with burnout and self-doubt. She questions if the fight is worth the personal cost. This introspection deepens her resolve and renews her commitment to lead with purpose. Vanessa meets with the city's mayor to advocate for broader, systemic reforms beyond the airport. The discussion is intense, revealing political complexities and compromises needed for real change. Disciplinary hearings unfold. Some officers face suspensions or termination. Others undergo retraining. The outcomes spark mixed reactions, highlighting the tension between justice and institutional protectionism. Vanessa launches community initiatives, workshops addressing racial bias, public forums for dialogue, and youth outreach programs at the airport. These efforts aim to rebuild trust and create lasting impact. Her heartfelt and powerful TED Talk goes viral. Vanessa shares her journey, emphasizing leadership, justice, and hope. Her words inspire thousands, marking her transition from local leader to national advocate. 1 year later, the airport reflects Vanessa's vision, a model of safety, fairness, and innovation. She walks through bustling terminals, greeted warmly by employees and travelers alike. Her legacy is no longer just a story of struggle, but one of transformation and empowerment. The noise had finally settled. The flashbulbs dimmed, the headlines faded, and the public's gaze shifted elsewhere. But for Vanessa, the story was far from over. It was, in fact, just the beginning. Standing by the window of her office, overlooking the airport she had fought so fiercely to protect and transform, Vanessa felt a quiet pride swell within her. The battles she'd faced, the injustice, the doubt, the isolation, had forged a strength she hadn't fully recognized until now. Her story wasn't just about one mistaken arrest or a viral scandal. It was about reclaiming dignity in a world eager to strip it away, about standing firm when the world tried to define her, and about using her voice to lift others who had been silenced. She thought about the faces she'd met along the way, the officers who'd begun to see beyond bias, the community members hungry for change, the young leaders inspired to carry the torch forward. This was the legacy she'd worked for, not fame, not vindication, but real, lasting transformation. The cameras might have left, but the work remained, and so did her resolve. Because some stories don't end when the headlines stop. they live on in the lives they touch and the changes they inspire. And Vanessa's story? It was just getting started.